Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for the launch of the 2020 Top Energy Performing School Boards Report. My name is Katja Ostaki, and I'm the Program Manager for the Sustainable Schools Program. Our presenter today will be Ian Jarvis. He's the Executive Director of the Climate Challenge Network. After his presentation, we'll be joined by representatives of 2 Ontario school boards for a Q&A session, which will be moderated by Ian Jarvis. And to close out our webinar, we will hear from Vicky Gagnon of ISO, as well as Mark Glacier and George Hansis of Enbridge Gas. Ian, if I can ask you to flip over to the next slide. While Ian's doing that, Sustainable Schools Program is part of the Climate Challenge Network, which is a nonprofit organization managing collaborative programs in various building sectors. The program is supported by ISO and Enbridge Gas, and the technical direction is provided by NLF Consulting. And with that, I will pass it over to Ian to start with the agenda.
Excellent, Katja. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Let's use the agenda, if we may, to kind of provide an overview of what Climate Challenge Network is looking to kind of accomplish this afternoon. Certainly, we have a lot of information, a lot of facts to share with you. But the item 5, and Katja has given you a bit of an overview of who will be talking with us, as well as myself today. But item 5 is the key for us. We really want to share with you, beyond the data, the story behind the story, what's been learned after 5 years of tracking the performance of individual schools across the province. We want to talk a little bit about, as the pandemic recovery kind of comes into place, what are the challenges you're facing, and how do we maintain a degree of focus on energy and climate during that period of time. And as Katja mentioned, looking to our friends from IESO and Enbridge to share what that they're there for, boards across the province, and looking to help where they can. So that's our plan for the day. Just in terms of the context of where the data comes from, this is the 2017-2018 school year data coming from the Ontario Ministry of Energy's public sector database. The boards at different times have provided supplementary information, particularly what's important for the analysis is around the heating system types in the different schools. A lot of that data has been updated this year, which was extremely helpful. And the ranking of the boards is based on energy conservation potential, energy savings potential, which is the difference between the actual energy use in 2017-18 and the normalized, weather normalized targets adjusted to the particular details of your individual schools. We'll explain the methodology as the program unfolds. But this is the data source, this is the background to the information. And because we've been tracking this for a number of years now, we're able to compare back to the 2019 report and look at the changes that have happened since then, and thereby comment on what kind of energy savings are actually been recorded over that 12-month period between 2016-17 and 2017-18. The table here summarizes, I think, it quite nicely. And there's been...
Ian, if I can interrupt you for a second.
Yes, please.
We are still seeing slide 2, which is up on your PowerPoint screen.
Oh, that is not good. So so it's moving forward for me, Katja? No change?
Nope.
Right. So I escape and then share screen again.
Sorry, everybody, just please bear with us. Okay, we're moving on to slide 3. If there is a chance to put this into presentation mode, that's great, or we can just follow along with this with the PowerPoint.
So help me, Katja. Are we still on the agenda slide?
We're on the agenda slide currently, yes.
Okay, and are we now on the top boards report slide?
Slide 4.
Okay, so I will look to get back into presentation mode and hope that will keep moving for us. Are we on slide 4 now?
Yes, if you can toggle the display settings up at the top, just like we did in the practice, I think that should take us back into the...
I'm on full screen. Up here, okay.
Yeah, but you need to go into that display setting and now switch or mirror, whichever one you did before, that should work again. That's perfect.
We good now?
Good now. Yes.
Okay, so back to source of the data 2017-18, the province-wide trends. Do we have that screen now?
Yep.
Excellent, good, back on track. So as I was touching on, sometimes you get kind of ironic coincidences of numbers. You'll see that across the two periods, one was a 2-year period from 2014-15, 2 years on to 2016-17. That's what we reported on last year. This year is a 1-year period, but strangely, in both years, there were 44 out of the 72 boards that recorded net savings over 1%, and the overall savings was 2.8%. That's just a coincidence of numbers, but the picture has changed quite remarkably. The previous year, electricity savings dominated with 4.7%. This year, the electricity consumption across the whole province, all of the boards, actually went up by almost 1%. 54 boards showed savings. In the previous report, only 23. The picture reversed itself with natural gas, where it was actually a pretty good gas year, with 4.8% province-wide savings and 90% of the school board showing savings. So showing net savings. So the overall picture is continued progress, but the shape of that progress has changed a lot. We're in discussions already with the IESO about the profile of which boards and which regions showed the electricity use changes, and a good deal of conversation coming with Enbridge about how the gas savings results match where they've seen activity around their programming and incentives. So this nicely closes the loop with respect to overall progress across the province. But overall, Ontario schools are showing improvement in energy use over the past 3 years. The savings potential is the essence of the ranking of the individual school boards. So here are all 72 school boards, and this presents the percentage energy savings, the targeted percent energy savings, which ranges from a low of a little less than 10% across all of the schools of the board at the top, which we'll show you in a moment who number 1 is this year, all the way to boards at the bottom with in excess of 40% overall energy savings potential across all of the board's properties that reported. Within that, the blue line is the electricity savings potential, the green is the natural gas savings potential. So very different characteristics between different boards, where some are quite electrical intensive and not so much gas, and we'll look at that later when we talk about carbon stars, low carbon stars. And understanding the profile which comes from the design of the schools, the kind of systems installed, is a useful starting point when planning improvements going forward. But every one of the boards on this call is shown on this chart. All 72 boards are there, ranging again from a low of less than 10% remaining savings potential up to a highs in excess of 40%. So the top performing boards, this is where there's supposed to be a drum roll and some music, but we didn't have time to line that up. But here are the top boards for for the 2017-18 year for the 2020 report. The congratulations to Superior Greenstone. There were data issues with changes in heating system types last year, so they weren't on the charts for last year, but they've come to the #1 ranking this year, which means they had the least savings potential by comparing their actual 2017-18 energy use with their rationalized targets, which we'll show you in just a moment. Sudbury Catholic came in second. Ottawa Catholic School Board, we have both Superior Greenstone and Ottawa Catholic to share some thoughts around question and answer period later. And the rest of you by now have found yourselves on this chart. There are two that found their way onto the report from last year. Rainy River showed substantial improvements over that period, and congratulations to the board and to the energy manager. And I think somebody else came in from number 21. Yes, Northeastern Catholic District School Board also made it for the first time into the top 20. But this is a significant badge of honor, and congratulations to the ongoing efforts for all of these boards for working their way into the top 20 for the 2020 report. The rolling, so the individual scores for each board come from rolling up all of their buildings that were reported. The overall potential for the province comes from rolling up all of the boards together, and that's what these numbers represent. That meeting these top quartile targets, these top quartile standards. So these standards are based on 25% of the schools are already at of that type, already at or better than that particular level. When all that's rolled up, we wind up with close to 30% electricity savings potential, 35% natural gas, 33% utility cost savings potential, which adds up to around $123 million a year, and substantial, almost 230,000 tons a year of greenhouse gas emissions. And this really is why Climate Challenge Network is doing this. That's the target number. Accelerating the take-up, the adoption, the practice of greenhouse gas and energy emissions reductions is the mandate of our organization, of our nonprofit organization. That's what we do, and that's what these numbers are intended to inform and inspire on a go-forward basis. So this is the big picture. This is what we regard as the achievable savings potential, which we consider at the top quartile level to be readily attainable through good operations, good programming, and cost-effective retrofits to building systems. For the first time this year, we're recording low carbon stars. So looking at the benchmarking, once we have the benchmarking in place, here are all the schools in Ontario. And the group at the top, the 1.01 kilogram per square foot, is tentatively adopted this year as a good practice target for emissions associated with energy use in each individual building. So there's a total of a little over 300 schools that are emitting less than 1.0 kilograms per square foot equivalent of greenhouse gas emissions. That becomes a new standard, and we will be recognizing all of those schools on a board-by-board basis on our website coming up next week. So this takes it to the individual school level, and our hope is that the school population, the school community will take some pride in having reached that 1.0 kilogram per square foot. You'll see others have work to do around greenhouse gas emissions, but we're celebrating for the first time this year our low carbon stars. And just to give one example of what that looks like, the Ottawa Catholic School Board, and we have Jerry again to talk to us later. They have the largest single number of schools that are below that 1 kilogram threshold, but not all of their schools are in that space. There's a fair amount of electric heat within the school, but it's extremely well controlled. And I say with a large number of low carbon schools, which means in general, in Ontario, presence of electric heat, either in the form of heat pumps or sometimes resistance heating. The concern then becomes at what cost, but you'll see later that Ottawa Carleton's average cost per square foot is also significantly below the provincial average. So through efficiency and a fair amount of electric heat, they're able to achieve low carbon levels at a reasonable overall utility cost per square foot of school area. The methodology, we've run through this before. I'll just give you a quick summary of updates this year, but this white paper is right now being updated to for the changes I'll talk about in just a moment. It will be again up on the website next week. So those of you who are inclined towards data and statistics, we welcome you all. Go take a look at the methodology, and we'd love feedback. We get it on a reasonably regular basis, and we love questioning. We love to kind of dig deeper into some of the numbers. But the methodology white paper is all published. It's transparent. The intent is that this analysis can be replicated by others if they wish to do so. In terms of data screening, we started this year with 4,968 buildings. Those of you who have good memories will recall last year the number was miraculously around 5,000. It was exactly 5,000, which was unusual. The data screening takes out schools that look like outliers in terms of their energy uses, either way too high or way too low. Any that are indicated in their school names as being closed, demolished, sold, etc. And any that are showing up as conventional heating systems, which means fuel-fired heating and as the basic heating system, but not reporting thermal energy use. We found in the past that that's often the propane or fuel oil use wasn't reported, so those were screened out as well. So in the end, we wound up with 95% of the schools remaining after the data screening, and that is the data set that everything else is based upon. Standard targets have not been updated. They were updated last year, you recall, as electricity improvements were showing up on a regular basis. But these same targets are used this year. They're based on 2012, 2013 weather and adjusted to the particulars of every individual school, the almost 5,000 buildings across the province. So those standard targets that are referenced there, they're updated to 2017-18 weather. They're adjusted to the closest weather station for each individual building. And those weather normalized targets then are adjusted for the heating system type. For example, a heat pump system requires more electricity and less thermal energy. So those adjustments are made. For the first time this year, we've adjusted for percentage air conditioning, which you folks have been reporting. So there's adjustments in there for air conditioning. The portables allowance, after a lot of very helpful back and forth with a number of boards, we've returned that to 10,000 kilowatt hours per year as the adjustment that was made. It didn't have a major effect, but it does affect things. And just for interest, there are about 11% more portables. We're up to 7,752 portables across the province right now, which is 11% higher than the year before. So the portables allowance, that is the metric that's used this year, and swimming pools where they do exist are adjusted by factors that come out of one of our other programs for municipalities as to what the energy allowance should be for a well-operated swimming pool. So those are the adjustments that are made. And what we've always wanting to do is try to take the data and relate it to real life examples of what's happening. So we have Bear Creek Secondary School, one of Simcoe County School Board's schools that's been through 2 rounds of effort around energy efficiency and environmental friendliness. The Energy Efficient Schools funding program, you'll recall back in 2010, the school went through 1 round of significant improvements that were highly engineering based. And in the last round of greenhouse gas funding, the school once again went through a round of upgraded controls. So this is the profile. This is the improvement over time. Overall energy use is down by about 30%. And Wanted to give you a bit of a summary. This case study will also be up next week on the Sustainable Schools website with a bit more detail. But the essence of the story through 2 rounds, phase 1 is all about this is not that easy. There are a lot of schools out there, some of which are old, but some of which, like Bear Creek, are relatively new, but which have fundamental engineering and installation problems that date right back to the beginning. So the story of Bear Creek was it was always problematic in terms of ventilation quality, stuffiness, and always problematic in terms of energy use. The Energy Efficient Schools funding paid for a complete lighting retrofit. The best practice that Simcoe County follows that we would commend to everybody is that they follow a lighting power density metric. So that was 0.6 watts per square foot with fluorescent. What that led to was a significant amount of delamping, of reduced lamps in a targeted way. 4-lamp and 3-lamp fixtures were modified significantly. A few fixtures were removed completely and quite a large number of ballasts. So that project aimed for a target lighting power density. The light levels were just fine within that, but it wound up with some quite exceptional results in terms of both occupant appreciation of the new lighting, but also electrical savings that are beyond what we normally see. So lighting power density we strongly recommend. But the engineering work was the big piece. There was a famous, one of the bigger air handling systems there when the insulation was removed from the return air duct work. The duct was found to have been collapsed, and there was no doubt it collapsed within weeks of when the school was originally opened, since when there was no return air finding its way back. So the fast track construction of the school led to a number of issues in terms of the mechanical installation, very high static pressures, low airflows, very high statics on the hydronic systems as well, and some pretty detailed engineering done, starting with extensive testing. And again, we're great advocates of testing HVAC systems so that you know what you've got, and then working through to fan relocations and duct enlargements and pipe enlargements and so on. So heavy engineering work, and we want to acknowledge here that some schools need that kind of attention, need that kind of effort. There's problems that go back to day one, and really re-engineering is called for. The second phase control was bringing in demand control ventilation, and you'll see the references here. The gym received the variable frequency dry that the other systems had previously. Zone dampers installed on 3 gyms, but a large number of CO2 sensors installed throughout the building to enable reprogramming around demand control ventilation. So those 2 phases, this is not untypical of what some high schools have been going through. Getting on to where does this story take us from here? As I mentioned before, the Climate Challenge Network provides this kind of analysis and this kind of reporting as a necessary foundation to action. But our interest is in seeing the rate of adoption, the rate of practice of energy and emissions reductions accelerated across the province. So our conversations with all of the boards that we're talking to, and with Norm and his group, and with the ministry. You've got so many things going for you. You have a supportive ministry. You have your OMC group working on this. But there is a major economic potential here that relates very much to the times we're in around COVID. So the summary from the previous page, knowing that emissions, carbon taxes, carbon pricing is going up at $50 a ton. In addition to the $123 million a year, there's a growing carbon cost attached to here. So there's a lot of economic reasons why this is a good investment for the province to make as we go through the economic recovery, and jobs are needed to make, and infrastructure investments will become the order of the day. The task is made simpler by the fact that across all of the boards, just 21% of the schools have 60% of that economic potential. So the Pareto principle works very well here, where a relatively small number of schools will deliver the largest share of the economic opportunity, which we would argue the province needs badly right now. And significant part of the environmental benefit and that for each board to understand which are its schools that are among that 21%. All but 9 boards have schools in that higher savings potential piece. Which are your schools, and that those become the focus for investment one way or another into improving the energy efficiency, meeting these targets, and delivering on the economic goals. The other piece before we turn to Jerry and Mark for their thoughts on what happened at Superior Greenstone and what happened at Ottawa Catholic, what do they see as their key areas for success. We wanted to pick up the idea of Ontario boards working together, and you actually do that a fair amount now. So, coming back to the comment, with Karen, you have a supported ministry that is there. They're helpful. They help you manage data. They run the UCD. You have the OMC Energy Subcommittee, which shares knowledge, shares best practices, shares ideas. We're suggesting here that further collaboration, one of the outcomes of this whole COVID situation is that groups are working together like never before. The challenges are greater than any individual organization can handle on its own, and it makes sense to pool resources, share best practices, share ideas. So over the next period of time, we'll be reaching out to boards and other stakeholders who are on the call here. There are industry players, there are government players, there are utility players. A lot of organizations have a vested interest in success here. But we would argue that leadership in Ontario's economic recovery can come from the school board sector. Without repeating what I said a moment ago, you're remarkably well positioned. You have the track record, you have the credentials. Ontario school boards are traditionally leaders in this space. It would be good to step up and provide a working example for other sectors to follow. There's going to be tremendous demands on all of you around what's coming to be known as the new normal, or I guess some people are calling it the new abnormal. But the ASHRAE's announcements around what they expect with respect to starting up schools after this period of shutdown, and ventilation systems in particular, but also domestic hot water systems, those should be of concern. Talking about extensive flushing, talking about unoccupied operation of ventilation systems. Doing that right is absolutely fundamentally important to the health of staff and students. But the climate crisis, just as a reminder, that hasn't gone away. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's arguably already killed more people and will on a go-forward basis than COVID has, and it is the dominant long-term global emergency. So looking to the school sector to balance those priorities, health and safety absolutely coming first, but with a view to climate, is an area that we would like to engage, Climate Challenge Network would like to engage with the school sector to work forward. So we'll be looking for volunteers to create a working group to look at, prioritize, and resources key areas, like making the case to government and to the school boards for funding, because the business case is compelling. It's offering a double-digit return on investment while solving some other significant problems, sharing knowledges and best practices, setting up pilot projects, and so on. So we see a lot of opportunity here for the school sector to get together, work together, and move the overall provincial agenda at a time when it desperately needs it. So that is sort of the key story from our webinar for today, and really looking forward to sharing some thoughts with Jerry and Mark around the particular profiles of their schools. So if we're trying to think about how do we give everybody on the call context as to what makes this number 1 and number 3 school board special. The Superior Greenstone, a relatively small board with significant geographical challenges up north. Ottawa Catholic with a long tradition of being at the top of, towards the top of the charts around sustainable schools. So the profile that we've kind of given you down below, let me just kind of run through what this means. Don't worry about the color coding because red sometimes is supposed to be bad. In this case, when it's on the left-hand side of this chart, red is good. So this profile is one that for all of the boards that wish to follow up with us and get their own detailed information, this is one piece of the profile that we'll be providing. But in terms of electricity savings potential, so this is the target savings for electricity on the left and for gas on the right. And what the first thing you see there is 50% or more of all of both board schools are in the 0 to 5% range. In other words, more than half the schools are already there. For us, that's an indicator of good management practice, and we'll explore that a little bit in a moment. On the right-hand side of those charts, same with gas, by the way, more than half of all of their schools have no targeted savings. They're already at or below the target standards that we've looked at. On the right-hand side of the page, across all of the schools in Ontario, about 11%, 10.9%, have greater than 50% electricity savings, and almost 25% of them have greater than 50% gas savings. There are almost no schools from Ottawa Catholic or from Superior Greenstone in those categories. So these are kind of profiles of success. You can see their rankings over the last couple of years. The energy cost per square foot, Superior Greenstone struggles with paying almost 20 cents a kilowatt hour up there, so that has a significant effect there. And the emissions tons per square foot, you can see how that compares with the board average. So that sort of context, these are the two individuals responsible for these boards we're talking to. And they're, in previous conversations with them getting ready for this, we've kind of dug into a few areas that we think might be of broad interest to all the school boards on the call. And the first one, I want to start with you, Mark, is building automation seems to be a central theme for most of the boards we talk to at the top end of the benchmark charts. And I'm wondering how you use building automation, how you specify it, how you use it to kind of manage the vast distances between buildings that you have to deal with.
Thanks, Ian. Sorry about that. I was just getting logged in. And in answer to your question, Ian, I guess with building automation systems, about 10 years ago, we decided that was going to be one of our mandates as part of our energy conservation plan. And being such remote in a remote district for us, having the information at our fingertips is actually critical. It's the only way we can manage our facilities, monitor our facilities on a daily basis, and react when we have concerning issues that we see electricity costs spiking or natural gas spiking on a 3-year average we monitor. So when we look at the building automation, it's a real high priority for the plant department, especially because we're a geographical region. One of the biggest focuses, I think, where we went with BMS and BAS, however you want to call it, was looking at the building designs and incorporating the technology that's available. The technology is there. It's how much your board wants to invest into it through capital funding. We were very aggressive with it. We looked at all the design work, coming in, and everything we do is spec'd with occupancy control, daylight harvesting, CO2 monitoring, all these type of aspects in the HVAC equipment. Another key component we looked at was education, because when we looked at our last rankings over the past 5 years, we'd ranked number 2, we'd ranked number 6, and we wanted to rank number 1. And then we finally achieved that goal this year. And looking at education was a key component, but we actually used our building automation systems to basically display that information to our staff and students. And we felt that we were going to gain some percentage of savings there. And we added interactive screens. The students can go in, they can see the building automation systems. And it's amazing how that filters into the student telling the teacher or the principal to turn the lights off. And little things like that. We also went into competitions among schools. So the interactive screens feeding from our building automation system allows the schools to compete against each other. They can go to the screen, they can look at it, and we can show based on square footage, what each school is doing. And then we also have competitions we put through the building automation system where schools that reduce the most, we reward them with the water bottles at the end of the year. So we have schools coming in, well, they wear like it's the hoodie day where all the schools wear hoodies. We get very aggressive. We drop the temperatures down to 15 degrees in the school, and everyone buys into the program. So I think those were, some really key components when we looked at the building automations system with it. And again, our remote district, and you mentioned it earlier, it's our challenge. And, we could be 500 kilometers from one region. So making sure we have that information at our fingertips is critical.
Sounds like a very positive school spirit that you have there as well. Does everybody get into this? Is it something that the more remote communities, that they can get around this idea?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we spent a lot of time with our site administrators promoting it. We also spend the time going to the schools and sharing that information with our teaching staff. So again, more educating, like you said earlier, we're educators. We should be the best educators out there, and we have to lead by example. So we start from there and we filter down into the bottom. And definitely we use resources from Eco Schools. They have all kinds of flip charts that we use, and we take advantage of all that. And that's all a part of our conservation plan for the schools for educating and buying in. And I do believe that, well, I think we'll talk about that maybe a bit after, but how we, invest our staff into buying into it and understanding the savings. We also look at greenhouse gas emissions. So we are part of the environmental committee. So we definitely, every time we're putting a policy in place to energy savings, it's great when you get the buy-in from your education on greenhouse gas reduction.
That's great. Let's build on that with you, Jerry, and what I'm impressed about with, there's a whole bunch of things I'm impressed about with what Ottawa Catholic is doing, but your annual report, your annual energy efficiency report against targets that you set to your trustees, like actually reporting to trustees every year and holding yourselves accountable to them. That struck me, and that within that report, you talk a lot about operations and behavior as well. So do you want to pick up on that theme? What does that feel like at Ottawa Catholic?
Well, our program started back in 2004 when the Board of Trustees and Senior Management approved the Framework for Energy Management. So we've been at it for about 15 years. And it's important, top-down, bottom-up approach to everyone. So that culture has been established for many, many years, and it's been a big part of our success. So building automation wise, we our head caretakers are building operators. They oversee the controls and set points on occupied and unoccupied set points, and schedules and temperature set points. And as we are now, as we are in March break or Christmas break, those set points are established for that time period, where on a holiday Monday, for instance, on the May long weekend, if we would have had one, that Monday would have been an occupied set point. So those reminders are always sent 4 or 5 days prior to a long weekend, and that's shared with principals and staff, and so they're aware of the background and the energy management aspect of things. And a lot of our building operators are setting these programs through the building automation systems for the full year, knowing what the holidays are, the summer camps, and we're controlling right from the school itself, so that if there's a community use of schools that's been canceled for that evening, that gym or that portion of the school now is put into unoccupied mode. So we're managing hands-on, and also we have HVAC technicians that have access to that system, and of course management at the administration building to see that we're staying we're staying on top of, or the building automation schedules are in place, let's say after a long weekend or a March break or Christmas break, so that that's part of the program. That's part of the culture that we've established here. So we're micromanaging.
So the caretakers and technicians, how informed are they about both the actual performance of their schools? For example, would you consider sharing the rankings of the schools coming out of this analysis or some other areas so that they know, man, we got room to improve, or we're already at the top of the chart? So the idea of ranking the boards here, ranking the schools, would you consider sharing that with your caretakers? Would that go well with the culture? And how do you keep them informed on a month-to-month or a quarter-by-quarter basis of whether they're making savings or falling back and so on? How connected are they to the pulse, if you like, to how the actual energy performance of their schools are doing?
That information process has been, data sharing has been a large part of our success. Knowledge is everything, data and managing that. And prior to the UCD and the Energy Cap software, we established a meter reading program on a monthly basis. All three utilities are being, meter readings are being taken. The school is seeing the consumption from month to month, and they're comparing from the previous years to that. So if there's been a significant increase or decrease, it's seen real-time managing. You see it within the day that the meter reading is down, and if there's any significant increase, I personally contact the school and find out through the head caretaker and through the technicians of that family of schools, is there been a reason why there's been a significant increase or a decrease. And if they cannot pinpoint as to if there's been excessive water use or excessive gas because it was a gas leak or
Yep.
It's found out immediately. So we're dealing with it right away. And if they can't find it, then we send in our technicians and our experts to visit at that school to help to support the head caretaker, which is crucial, because they're looking after it. They care. They take pride in what they're seeing. And if they can't, they have no answers as to why there's been a difference in that month compared to the previous years, then we jump in and support that. So it's a collaborative team effort that it's been very successful for us.
Yeah, clearly it really has been. And again, increasingly that shows us that's what best practice is all about. When you got the staff engaged, like a well-motivated staff can do a better job with an old clunky school than a brand new school with staff that don't really get it. So congratulations on that. Mark, let's go back to the challenges of doing what you do in the north. And how do you direct when you're either building a new school or a major renovation or the service contractors, how do you manage those external providers that are kind of essential that they get their job right so that you can do what you need to do to get the results that you're showing there? How do you manage those outside service providers?
So with the outside service provider, so we'll be, now I'm assuming you're referring to, if you have a BMS system, you're using that firm.
Your boiler service companies,
sure,
the folks who look after the place, yeah.
Absolutely. So we've invested time with our service providers. So what we've done is, there's different manufacturers out there supplying building automation systems. We have spent some time with we have a preferred contractor list. We invest time with them on reviewing the sequence of operation that we're looking for, the set points we're looking for, and then we hold them liable to basically is once they're completed their job, we'll take the time to review that set points are correct. They've set everything up with what we're looking for our building design and for the occupancy of the building. So when we look at, our service providers, we do that. We do not have any service contracts, so Ian, and we looked at it two ways. Having a service contract with your building automation company, in our northern geographical region, the travel and mobilizing costs is extremely expensive. So for us, even though we only have 15 boards or 15 facilities, the cost for a service contract is 75,000. I opt the option where I said, if I'm going to invest 75,000 in service contracts, we're going to put 75,000 in building automation systems and keep adding building automation systems. So we have no service contracts with our energy management companies or control companies. We manage that all in-house ourselves.
That's good to know. Jerry, the same question back to you. How do you make sure you get what you need from the folks providing services to the board?
Well, I'll just touch on the savings by design charrettes that we had through the Enbridge gas that was conducted 6-7 years ago, and we have repeat designs in our new schools, so we know what works for us, it's so our architects, our consultants, our engineers, they know exactly what we're looking for, and we know what we're trying to achieve, like 25% less than the standard building. I forget what it's called now. I'm sorry.
The model code. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So we've been successful that way. So the template is set. So it's just repeat designs, and it's been very successful with that. And every time that we go back to the drawing board, there's always something else we pick up on. Insulation being the more recent one for the better dollar value for the conservation efforts. So that was something that we added on to the last 2 elementary schools that we built. So that's the expectation that we have. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you. The last question for both of you. You both got full-time jobs. This stuff takes time. Just talking about it takes time. How do you make the time? How do you find the time to make energy efficiency? Like, as you're describing your role, we're guessing you haven't got a team of 15 people there working with you. How do you find the time? How do you make the time to make these kinds of results happen? And again, consistently year after year. Let's start with you, Mark.
Sure, thanks, Ian. Ian, I think it's like anything, scheduling your time and time management is a key component. Also looking at the importance of saving on utilities, and where we can save any type of money for our budget and keeping within our operations. So it would make it a priority. And on a daily basis, I definitely flag, 10 minutes every day. I go through the facilities real quickly. I take a look at any alarms that have come in, anything that's flagged that has used more consumption. It just sets me an alarm. We'll take a quick peek at it and we'll manage it that way. So I think the whole thing is, we're very passionate about, reducing energy costs, reducing the carbon footprint for our board, and taking that passion and then incorporating in your day-to-day tasks is something we just do. We just manage it that way.
It's great. I think you're both, having spoken to you, you're both pretty competitive as well. So Jerry, last word to you, same question. How do you make the time to make all this happen?
Well, there's less time being spent on it now. I've got other major portfolios make part of my job at the Ottawa Catholic School Board, but energy is definitely the #1 portfolio, and it took up a lot of my time the first 5 years. We've been at it for 15 years now. The 80% of your time for 20% of the savings. Well, now it's just the reverse of that. It's 20% of my time for 80% of the savings, and it's just the culture, the inculcation that we've created through the orientation of our staff, new hirees, new principals coming on board, knowing exactly what the expectations are, the targets that we set. It's just, it's just managing your time properly, like Mark was saying. That's the key, and you know when when issues have to be dealt with on a month-to-month basis. So all that's been established, and it's just part of our culture now.
Great. So again, congratulations to you both. Thanks so much for sharing this, because it's again, it's all, the technology is not that complicated in the end. It's the people side that makes it work. So hearing directly from successful school boards is valuable to all of us, and we're taking copious notes. So once again, our thanks on behalf of the more than 100 people, I guess, on this call. So thank you for that. Kathy, can I pass it back to you? And we'll hear from our friends at IESO and Enbridge on what they can do to help move this agenda forward.
Certainly, Ian. Thank you so much, Jerry and Mark, once again. Ian, if I can ask you to just flip over to the next slide. I think we're just going to use that to introduce Vicki and Mark and George. So Vicki will provide some closing thoughts from IESO, and then Mark and George will speak on behalf of Enbridge. Vicki, if you would like to share your screen at this point, I think you can go ahead, please.
Excellent. Can you see my screen, and can you hear me?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. I'm Vicki Gagno with the IESO. We manage the electricity grid in Ontario, and I've been at the IESO for about 15 years, focusing on all of the public sector organizations, including school boards. And the IESO funds energy efficiency because for every dollar that we put into efficiency, we receive $3 in savings for the system costs. So efficiency is the cheapest resource that we have on our grid. We currently have 5 efficiency programs through Save On Energy that provides incentives for commercial organizations like school boards, and I will focus on 3 of them today, the 3 most popular ones that school boards typically participate in: the Retrofit Program, our Energy Performance Program, and the Energy Manager Program. And all of our programs are available for applications to receive until December of this year. So a retrofit program is the most active program that we have, and we have a number of incentives for prescriptive and custom measures. Recently, we've upgraded our prescriptive measures to include more LED lighting options, as well as some compressed air options. And we've also removed some of the older lighting technologies. We have a number of supports for the retrofit program. We have some recent energy efficiency service providers available across the province to help you with your applications. And we have a number of resources on our website through our retrofit portal, a number of videos and tips on applying. And if you have any specific questions about the program, you can send an email to retrofit@ieso.ca or call our 1-800 number, and we have people who can respond to you if you have any specific retrofit questions. We have had consistent participation from school boards in the retrofit program. The charts we have here are the active participation from school boards in the retrofit since 2011, all the way up into 2020. And the top chart is the number of applications from school boards each year, and the bottom chart is the total incentives that school boards have received each year. And since 2011, school boards have received over $15 million worth of incentives from the retrofit program. On both of the charts, the top yellow bar is the total number of applications, and then I also broke it down between lighting and non-lighting applications. A majority of the applications we receive from school boards are for lighting projects. They were also starting to see more HVAC and other types of projects. It looks like in 2019 and 2020 that participation has fallen off, but the data is completed applications, and so for a number of the projects that were applied for in 2019 and 2020, we just haven't received the completed project date, so we're expecting those numbers to go up over the next few months. The energy performance program is a pay for performance type program where we agree on a baseline, and then at the end of the year you get paid for whatever savings you have, 4 cents a kilowatt hour for whatever savings. And this is a particularly good program for BAS systems and recommissioning or scheduling and all of the types of projects that we just recently heard from the Superior, Greenstone, and Ottawa Catholic District School Board, as well as the Bear Creek case study. A lot of those would be ideal participants in the energy performance program. We currently have 2 school boards participating, representing 43 buildings. So it's becoming a more popular program, particularly if you don't want to apply for specific lighting or certain measures. It takes a much more holistic approach to the building savings.
Yeah, and Vicki, Bear Creek is actually one of those schools.
Exactly. Bear Creek is one of those schools. So it was really nice to see to be able to account for all of the whole building savings, which is great. Our final program is the Energy Manager program. It's also a pay for performance program, but it's designed to help support the salaries of energy managers, the people who make the energy savings happen. And we currently have 5 funded energy managers at school boards right now. The minimum target of savings is 1,000 megawatt hours per year, and it's paid at $40 a megawatt hour, up to $150,000 a year for savings. I know I'm short on time. I just want to quickly mention that with the COVID, we have had a pause on in-person visits for any of our programs. However, the programs themselves are still running. We are still accepting applications, and incentive payments are still being paid. And we continue to monitor the market to see what will happen with the programs right now. But at this point, there have been no changes to the programs other than a pause on in-person site visits. We, as I mentioned earlier, all of our programs are ending December of this year. We're currently in discussions with the ministry right now to see how energy efficiency might work in with a green economic recovery moving forward. So we're very hopeful that there will be a role for energy efficiency in the green economic recovery post December of this year. Where it's in the government's hands right now, but we're very hopeful there will be some efficiency programs after this. And that's it for me. I'm always happy to hear from folks if you have any specific questions on programs.
Thank you so much, Vicki. And we are going to turn it over to Mark Glacier and George Hansis at Enbridge for their closing thoughts.
Hi, so it'll be me, George, speaking, and I'm just queuing up the presentation. Hopefully it loads up.
That's perfect.
Hopefully that's come through.
Yep.
Okay, hello everyone. Quick introduction. This is the voice of George Hansis. I'm a part of the energy conservation team at Enbridge, responsible for delivery and outreach to commercial segments. Also on the call, as mentioned, here as well as my colleague, Mark Glacier, who has a similar role as I, but in the Legacy Union geography portion of the province. And finally, a few names you'll be familiar with, Julian Kazan, Anthony Centrito, Jerry Box, and David Sertic, who are also on the call. They are your energy advisors that work closely with school boards to develop energy opportunities, quantify those benefits, and help move those projects along. So I'm not going to go into detail about our commercial programs, as many of you know them quite well and participate year over year, but I do just want to call out and take a moment, briefly starting with, at the beginning with audits. Whether by a third-party engineering firm or walk-through site visits by our energy advisors ourselves, it's a start for opportunity identification and benchmarking, as well as project development. Generally, we support audits for schools on a case-by-case basis to develop scopes that help augment energy conservation efforts and promote our agenda, which is for our customers to realize gas savings. Moving down to the second point, our prescriptive program offers fixed incentives for known gas savings, making those technologies more affordable and palatable. And while some schools or school boards have unique needs or challenges where cookie cutter approach is simply not sufficient, we work closely with school boards to develop any gas savings project through our custom program. The last point here is on the slide is operational improvements and energy management. This includes programs like our Run It Right program or Run Smart, where we support a holistic approach to energy management through a number of avenues, such as upgrading meters to pulse capable outputs, hosting a dashboard to track and monitor gas consumption, as well as working closely with boards to understand their unique operational challenges and using these programs to tailor operational improvements to promote recommissioning of existing equipment. One program that's not mentioned here that Jerry from Ottawa Catholic mentioned was our commercial savings by design, including charrettes for new school builds. I thought I'd take 20 seconds just to remind everyone that our boiler campaign is still on. It is a limited time offer which launched in January of this year, offering 2 times the regular incentive. It is capped at the lesser of 50% of the project cost, or $100,000. And while we do recognize there is a pandemic going on and we are listening to our commercial customers' challenges through this time and following their lead, we are hearing that they're counting on the additional incentives to carry these projects forward. So we've extended our deadline to the end of July. It's not reflected on this graphic, but we have extended our deadline to the end of July, and we will be accepting late submissions on a case-by-case basis. So in general, there's animations here, I'm just gonna go through them. This summary slide describes all of our program generally, starting at the top of the cycle with knowledge development. We offer quarterly newsletters to our customers. Included in those are energy tips and access to our case studies. Our advisors, who are the key, serve as sort of a conduit, an information conduit. They can also connect you to available industry resources, service providers, consortiums, as well as natural gas technology resources to our very own research and business development teams, which are a part of our core business, actually. Moving to the second image over at 3 o'clock, our advisors can connect you with your energy information, profile your natural gas usage, so that not only can our customers really quantify consumption, but they can also help understand where natural gas goes once it passes through the meter, how much goes where and when. This is an important first step in developing opportunities, targeting the best loads, but equally important in quantifying them also. Our advisors use available energy tools, assumptions, and experience from industry best practices. And of course, the end goal is providing an analysis of gas savings so that our commercial customers can understand their energy benefits together with the costs involved, so that we can put together collectively a business case. And the last diagram here is, here at 9 o'clock, is action implementation. Although it's great to have the best ideas documented, our incentives help lift those business cases off the ground into action and implementation, helping offset any financial barriers. So I only have 2 slides left, but I did want to call out some of the technologies which are more prevalent with school boards. And I'm sure you've all already seen or heard about most of them, but I thought they were worthy of mention. And they are building automation systems, high efficiency or condensing water heating, heat and energy recovery ventilators, control upgrades, which can include a variety of things which were already mentioned already, such as demand control ventilation or night setbacks, optimal starts, ventilation equipment, as well as set point automation optimization. And I'll just close off by highlighting our collective 2019 successes. I know up to this point we're talking about results up to 2018, but I thought it was timely to include 2019 results as well. Through our relationships with school boards and industry friends like Enerlife, last year we worked with about 43 school boards. I actually think that number is greater because there were some gaps in our data, but approximately 43 school boards, 150 energy projects across the province, which resulted in 65 million cubic meters of natural gas savings over the life cycle of the equipment. In terms of GHG emissions, this is approximately 120,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. And for context, everyone likes to talk about trees, so that's about 1 million trees to offset those emissions. So I think that's it. I take the opportunity to thank Enerlys again for providing the platform and the opportunity to speak to Enbridge energy efficiency programs. And if there was only one takeaway from my yammering around, it would be to broadcast our energy services email, which is energyservices@enbridge.com, where we can connect you with one of our energy advisors. So I'll leave it at that. I believe there'll be a Q&A at the end, so I'll pause there and I'll turn it over to Katya.
Thank you so much, George. That was really helpful. Actually, we did get some questions through the Q&A, but because we have pretty much run out of time, I will simply pass them all on to panelists for addressing by email to whoever asked those questions. I will try to share my screen right now. 1 second. And there we go. I'll leave this last slide up on the screen. Thank you very much to everybody who tuned in for this presentation, and thank you especially to our panelists and speakers. Your time and expertise is very much appreciated. The Sustainable Schools website now has the actual report posted on it, so please go and check it out. And as I mentioned already in my note, please feel free to email me and any of the panelists with feedback and to request your board's ranking and results. So thank you so much, everybody, once again, and we hope to hear from you soon.